contact. I think you all have handouts, and there are some typos, so when you read that you can see and you will notice. So when we discuss, we will correct those mistakes. It's very obvious. When you look at it, you can find it. Okay?
Okay.
As you all know, contact is always explained in terms of three, combining three together. Or the Pali word is Tinnan Sangati Passo. Since you learn Pali, this sentence might be helpful for you to remember the Pali word and how contact is explained in Pali or describe it in Pali. What are the three? Senses, sensory object, consciousness, and contact arises from these three. Even if there are senses, sensory objects, if there is no consciousness, contact will not take place. We will discuss this little more detail later on. And in SammaDitthi Sutta, this is very important discourse on causation or dependent origination. Dependent origination is very profound and basic principle of existence, because not one single thing exists by itself. There are always at least two things must come together. The formula for dependent origination, simplest formula, is when this exists, this exists. When this comes into existence, that comes to existence. When this is not, that is not. When this passes away, that is passes away. That passes away. For example, when you are angry, you feel pain. When you are not angry, that pain will not be there. When you are greedy, you have pain. When there is no greed, no pain. That's simple. When one exists, the other exists. It is just like when one exists, its shadow exists along with that. Shadow does not exist without the object, and object cannot exist without a shadow. So when one exists, the other exists. So we have to understand the dependent origination in this way. It goes into more and more complex factors coming together. But the main principle is that only when one exists, the other exists. Okay, and this very profound teaching is explained to some extent in SammaDitthi Sutta in Digha Nikaya. There we find this statement. It is I got the translation. With mentality, materiality as condition, there is contact. How that is so, Ananda, should be understood in this way. If those qualities, traits, signs and indications through which there is a description of the mental body were all absent, would designation contact be discerned in the material body. Now we talk about mental body and material body. What is, we all understand material body. Material body is made up of 4 primary elements. Mental body is made up of contact, feeling, perception, thought, and attention. They are called Phassa, Vedana, Sanya, Chetana, Manasikara. When these 5 put together, that is called mentality. It is not just mind, but mentality. And therefore it is called mental body. It's a body of collection of factors. So, Buddha said, when mentality and materiality are not do not have these qualities. What are the qualities? Traits, signs, indications. At least we take all this, through which there is description of the mental body were all absent. Would designation contact be discerned in the material body? So, mental body we can explain through certain traits, signs and indicators. What are the traits, signs and indicators we have to describe material body? We say feeling, perceptions, thoughts and attention and contact. These are the qualities of mental body, and we do not see them. We have to use a language, signs, some kind of marks we have to use to indicate that they exist. And they are called traits, signs and indicators. If they were not present, designation contact be discerned in the material body. Now when we will discuss the rest of the things first, and then we go into more detailed discussion. We go through the rest. Then designation contact. Now we talk about impingement contact and designation contact. Designation contact is called adhivacana sampassa. And then designation contact is synonymous with mind contact, mano sampassa. Now we have 6 kinds of contacts: chakku sampassa, sota sampassa, ghana sampassa, jivha sampassa, mano sampassa, kaya sampassa, mano sampassa. These are the 6 kinds of contacts: eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact and mind contact. Out of these 6, mind contact is synonymous with designation contact. If those qualities, traits, signs and indicators through which there is a description of the material body were all absent, would impingement contact be discerned in the mental body? Certainly not, Venerable Sir. Now, designation is sort of a representing. You designate somebody on behalf of an organization, right? So the mind designates these 6 senses to represent the mind. So they bring information to the mind. And therefore mind gets impingement contact. These are designation contacts. Senses are designated to contact with the rest of the world, outside world. Through eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind, information brings, and they, through the eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, body contact, tongue contact, brings contact into the mind to make it mind contact. Otherwise, mind has no way to contact. Mind doesn't operate by itself without any senses. Mind cannot reach the world without any senses. If someone born without any senses, there may not be mind in that person. Because mind doesn't operate at all without any material body. Even in the finest stage of material body, the mind operates even in the finest stage of material body. We will see that later on. Now, for now, we must remember the impingement contact be discerned in the mental body. Passa, Vedana, Sanya, Chetana, Manasikara. When the minds contact something, when eye contact brings something to the mind, then mind knows through the eye, this is such and such and such and such. It is the mind that recognizes, not the eye. Eye simply brings information from outside. Even if the eyes are open, if the mind doesn't work, even though the reflections of any object fall in the eye, mind doesn't recognize. You might have seen some individuals born with various physical defects. They are just there. They don't recognize anything. Why? The mind is not responding to external object through eyes, ears and so on. Therefore, mind has to have consciousness and also the ability to recognize. In the mental body, Passa, Vedana, Sanya perception should be there. Attention should be there. And consciousness. Consciousness may be there, but if there is no attention, no perception, no at least these two, there may be contact, but there is no way to express that mental state. So, impingement contact. What is impingement contact? Impingement contact is contact occurring through the 5 physical senses, sense faculties, eye, ear, and so forth. They are the one that brings information to the mind. If those qualities, traits, signs, and indicators through which there is a description of the mental body and material body were all absent, would either designation contact or impingement contact be discerned? If the body doesn't have its own bodily material, the elements, then you cannot say the body is there. And if there is no way to express when we have, say, the feeling, unpleasant feeling, happens in the mind, there is no way to know unless we, wrinkle our eyebrows, form wrinkles on forehead, and clench our fists and grind our teeth. Some kind of expression should be there. Otherwise, what is happening in the mind, nobody knows. When they give a jab, you say, oh, you express it very quickly, right? If wind blows from outside, you shiver, and the sweat pours all close. You can see these symptoms. Because without these things, inner feeling of cold, we don't know. If those qualities, traits, signs, and indicators through which there is a description of mentality, materiality were all absent, would contact be discerned? There is no way to know contact if those things were not available in the mind, in the mental body or material body. So the Buddha said, in our understanding, contact is a very simple thing, but it has a very complicated process, complicated things happening in the mind and body. And that is what Buddha wanted to explain here. When we use the word phassa, contact, in this discourse we were talking about contact. Contact means both adhivachana sampassa and patika sampassa. Both are included in this word contact. That is mental contact, physical contact. Both are included in the word contact. So, adhivachana sampassa has a describing quality. Patika sampassa has a striking quality. So when we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, we can describe it. But the real contact is in the mind. It goes and impinges the mind. And therefore it is called impingement contact. What the senses have is called adhivachana contact, designation contact. Then I mentioned here ayatana attainment. What is this ayatana attainment? Ayatana means akasanancha ayatana, viññānañca ayatana, Akincanya ayatana, neva sanyana sanyaya ayatana. These are called ayatana. Ayatana means in our ordinary mundane conversation, usage, ayatana means a center where there are a lot of activities. I think people are familiar with what you call in Adhyapana ayatana. Adhyapana ayatana means the place where there is education. Institute. So, institute means place where there are a lot of activities. It may not necessarily be a place. It is an entity that we use in our conversations. So, for instance, marriage institute. Marriage institute, there is no one particular place, but it is all over. But that whole, activities is called institute. So, similarly, ayatana is used in a very most subtle mental states through which you can attain through the practice of meditation. Especially when you attain the fourth jhana, beyond that there are no words to explain what is happening because they are so subtle and therefore they simply are called ayatanas. There is no way to explain it. First jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana and so forth, you can explain it various ways. Explaining qualities of the first jhana, second jhana and so forth. But beyond that, attainment you cannot explain in the same terms, and therefore they simply called ayatana. What are they? Ayatana of, they are called attainment of the perception of infinity of space, perception of infinity of perception, and perception of nothingness, perception of neither perception nor non-perception. These are the four ayatanas. When you begin with the perception of infinity of space, your mind has to get rid of impingement contacts. Impingement contact is the last, the most subtle contact. Through the senses, mind gets information, mind gets the contact impinges the mind, and that remains in the mind as memory. So when you attain the infinity of space attainment, you have to forget the eye contact. The information came from the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and even the mind. So get rid of all outer connections in order to have an infinity of space, attainment. And so it is described in these terms. With the complete surmounting of perceptions of form, with the disappearance of perceptions of sensory impact, with non-attention to perceptions of diversity, aware that space is infinite. A bhikkhu enters upon and abides in the bells of infinite space. Now you can see the impingement, last stage of the most subtle kind of contact is the impingement contact. It sounds like very strong, very gross, but it is the most subtle contact. Okay. If you want to hear the Pali, since you are learning Pali, you can see the Pali there. A bhikkhu sabbaso rupa sannyanam amanasikara. Samatikkama. Sabbaso means entirely, completely. Rupa sannyanam, perceptions of form. Samatikkama, disappearing or surmounting. Patika sannyanam amanasikara. Patika sannyanam attangama. Patika here, the word for impingement contact, the word used in Pali in this particular context is patika sanya, perception of impingement. Patika also is used for what do you call the grudge. Anger increases to a point where you feel like killing somebody, taking revenge. That state is called patigha. Sometimes it is called vaira in Sanskrit, vaira in Pali. Patigha is very persistent, consistent growth of higher level of anger. But here patigha means just impingement contact. So when it comes to that state, because you have overcome all these hindrances, one of which is anger, when you overcome that, you don't have any anger anymore, but impingement is still there. Contact is there. Patika sannyanam attangama. Attanga means passing away or abandoning. Nanatta sannyanam amanasikara. Nanatta sanya means what you call diversity. Nanatta means diversity. Various. Sanya, perception. You overcome that. Amanasikara means not paying attention. Manasikara means paying attention. Amanasikara means not paying attention. Ananto akasoti, when one enters that state, all the person has in mind at that time is infinity of space. Infinity of space. It is called akasananchayatana, the attainment or abiding in the perception of infinity of space. Upasampadya means having attained, Virati lives. I just wanted to make it, give this verbatim translation of this, since for your understanding, since you are learning Pali. So, there is another state of contact in the Sanya Vediti Nirodha. Sanya Vediti Nirodha means cessation of perceptions and feeling. We learn contact as one of the 4 foods. Remember at the beginning of this discourse, I think the second part, first is knowing unwholesome and their root, wholesome and their root. The second section is understanding 4 nutriments. One of the 4 is contact. Contact becomes food for feeling. Feeling arises from contact. Now, feeling is described in Samyutta Nikaya in a very striking, very strong simile. The simile is, we did not discuss this earlier because we didn't have much. We discussed so much of the feeling. 2 lessons we had on feeling. But this particular simile is very important to remember in relation to the feeling that arises from contact. The simile is, sometimes you might, your hair may stand on ends when you hear the simile. That is why that simile is used, for that reason, for people to understand it clearly, what the contact really means. The simile is skinned cow. Her skin is removed, and she, if she is in the open, wind blows, and that also is painful. When he stands in the sun, sunlight hurts her. When he goes close to a tree, the tree's touch is painful. And flies, mosquitoes sitting on the body makes it painful. If she goes to the water, because the land has so many perils, dangers, she jumps into the water, then the water insects, the fish, will eat her flesh. And the water itself touching, also is touching with the water is painful. You feel the pain?
Yes.
You feel the pain. That is the nature of contact. Contact always brings feelings. Now, not only unpleasant feeling, sometimes pleasant feeling also arises because of contact. Now, when she is in the sun, if wind blows, she feels a little comfortable. When she is in the cold, in sunlight will bring a little comfort, depending on where she is. Because she is so, we all know the skin is the most vulnerable to anything outside. it brings lot of information. And when that skin is removed, inside all we have is the nerves, nerve ends. All the nerve ends come to the surface. When the skin is removed, the nerves ends are so unbearable. So, feeling, the contact is the food. Food for what?
Contact is the food for feeling.
Food of feeling. When feeling arises, we discussed in 2 classes, perception arises. Then thought arises, we begin to think about it.
Decision.
And then we build up all kind of conceptual proliferations. As you see in the Madhupindika Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya, Honeyball Discourse, wherever Mahakaccana explained to Venerable Sariputta how conceptual proliferation build up, increase our concepts. Our mind is maybe 100% filled with concepts, and we bring more and more concepts. All these concepts arise through contact, feeling and thinking. We start with contact. Contact in a very subtle way and very gross way. Contact with external things, ideas, opinions, beliefs, and so forth and so on. All these contact. So that is why the Buddha said, contact is one of the 4 types of food, nutriments, that brings food for feeling, perception, thought, and building up conceptual proliferations. So, when one attains Nirodha Samapatti means cessation of feeling and perceptions. There are only 3 types of contacts. What are they? Sunyata, Animitta, Appanihita. These are just mere concepts for an average person who does not meditate, who has not reached this stage. First, one concept is, one contact is contact of emptiness. This emptiness is emptiness of hatred, greed, emptiness of perception, and that is liberation of mind, one door of liberation of mind. This is called the attainment of enlightenment. Through these 3 doors, if one enters this attainment of enlightenment through one of them, all the other remaining 2 also are there. Second is signlessness. Signlessness means sign of greed, sign of hatred, sign of delusion. are present. That means there is no sign of greed, no sign of hatred, no sign of delusion. Then, or appanihita. Appanihita means there is no entity, a base, foundation for the mind to settle. Sunyata particularly means absence of permanent entity called self. And only one attains this stage can one see the emptiness of self perfectly clearly. So the contact depends on forms and names and form, or materiality and mentality, and they are possessions and based on desire, mentality and materiality, or the holding on to something, clinging, craving, all arise based on desire. Then, when desire does not exist, there is no taking as mind. We all know the concept of my, mine, I exist purely because of our desire. Desire to exist. Desire to exist. It is so powerful and so subtle. Without that notion of I, we ordinary people feel there's nothing. Without I, without my, without mind, there's nothing. This I, my, mind is based on this very powerful force called desire. Desire to exist. Desire to, sometimes psychologists might say survival instinct. Survival instinct. That the word instinct they might use, but in Western psychology, but in Buddhist terminology, according to Dhamma, that is the desire to exist, which we discussed earlier. In Mahasatipatthana Sutta we discussed, and in this sutta we discussed earlier. When form has vanished, contact do not touch one. That is, mental form, physical form vanishes completely, then all contact will cease. So, when you attain the state of cessation of feelings and perception, contact arises in the mind even without five senses. Even without five senses, contact arises in mind. That contact is contact of Nibbana. Pusanti dhira Nibbana. Pusanti dhira Nibbana. They mentally contact that cessation of feeling and perceptions. All gone, and still they have this final state of Nibbana contact. It is completely beyond ordinary person's perceptions and thinking. And therefore it is extremely difficult or impossible for us to explain to anybody unless the person attains that state. Other things can, to some extent, we can explain things in mundane level. To some extent we can explain using signs, designation, symbols and so forth, similes, examples and so on. But this state nobody can explain. Then Buddha said in another discourse, Phassa samudaya sabbhe dhamma. Phassa samudaya sabbhe dhamma, all the dhamma arise from contact. Dhamma means mental states, like you see in the Dhammapada, first two stanzas say Mano Pubbangama Dhamma. Their Dhamma means all mental states, wholesome, unwholesome, neutral, and so on. Dhammas, wholesome Dhamma, unwholesome Dhamma, neutral Dhamma. They are called in Abhidhamma term Kusala Dhamma, Akusala Dhamma, Abhyakata Dhamma and so forth. Wholesome Dhamma, unwholesome Dhamma, and inexpressible Dhamma. All exist from, all come into existence from contact. Just remember this skinned cow's simile. Anything, everything comes into existence from contact. Especially mental contact. You have been, suppose you have been to what you call Arctic region, a particular spot. You are here, thousands of miles. Like this in a second, in not even a second. I don't know how quickly. As soon as you think, we are there. All the details are there in our mind. The things that we saw, heard, and felt, smelled in particular spot in Arctic region come to our mind. Because the mind contact all of them so fast. All these are dhammas, memories. Dhamma here means memories. Dhamma means all mental objects. That memory of that particular place is in this mind, so this mind doesn't have to travel there to remember all the details. We contact very quickly. So, Buddha says, Phassa samudaya sabbhe dhamma. All mental states, whatsoever, emotional, physical, psychological, whatever, mental states arise from contact. So, Buddha said in another place in Samyutta Nikaya, I have said upavana, suffering arises dependently, not independently. Depending on what? Depending on contact. Suffering arises from contact. And liberation from suffering also arises from contact. All Dhamma means both suffering and end of suffering. All Dhammas arise from contact. And the word Buddha used there, paticca samuppannanko upavana vuttang maya king paticca passang paticca. Paticca means depending on, samuppannang arisen, ko indeed, upavana is the name of the person, vuttang said maya by me. King paticca, king means what? Paticca depending on what? Passang paticca, depending on contact. All mental phenomena originate from contact. Phassa samudaya sabbe dhamma. This you find in King Mulaka Sutta in Anguttara Nikaya, Attaka Nipata. All thoughts are triggered by the contact. All conceptual proliferation starts from contact, as I mentioned earlier. Mentality, nama rupa. Mentality is compressed word. When it is decompressed, we find contact, feeling, perception, thoughts, and attention. All of them begin to activate when the mind contacts any mental or physical object. When mind contacts any physical or mental state, feeling arises, perception arises, thought arises, attention arises. I think this I mentioned last time. When you are, suppose you are sleeping, all of a sudden you hear something, a sound. And it doesn't take too long for the sound to enter the mind. And mind wakes up. Mind wakes up as soon as the contact impinges the mind. Then it begins to investigate what is this sound, where it came from, it came through the ear, and begin to investigate and think about all the details about the sound. But first thing is contact is, we learn contact as nourishment in earlier lessons. See, another thing is very important. Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta and where Buddha and also in Phassa Mulaka Sutta in Samyutta Nikaya, Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya, Paticca Sampassa, when both Paticca Sampassa and Adivajana Sampassa join together, contact exists depending on mentality and materiality. This is further explained in these two discourses. In Majjhima Nikaya, Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta, and Samyutta Nikaya, Phassa Mulaka Sutta. Then, we all know contact with worldly conditions. What are the worldly conditions? In Mangala Sutta, last stanza, the last but one stanza, Puttasya lokadhammehi chittam yasya nakampati asokam virajanke mangetam mangalamuttamam. Lokadhamma means worldly conditions. What are they? Labha, alabha, ayasa, yasa, ninda, pasansa, sukha, dukkha, 8. Now these are all mental states, all mental states. Labha, gain. When ordinary people gain, they are so delighted, so thrilled, happy, thinking that this is going to last forever. When they lose, alabha, when they lose, they grieve, sorrow, lament, and feel despair. Why? That is going to be permanent. Labha, ayasa. Ayasa means defame. Yasa is fame. When one is famous, he or she is very delighted that I am somebody. There is a recognition.
Is that the same as reputation?
Reputation. Good reputation. But the person thinks that is permanent. But it turns the other way around afterward. Defame. Especially when any tiny little mistake is committed by a very famous person, his popularity drops very quickly. People begin to think twice. Then ninda pasansa. Ninda is blame, pasansa means praise. And Buddha said in Dhammapada, it's a very long discourse. I don't have time to explain the whole thing, but this man called Atula went to I don't remember the names of these monks. He went to one monk to ask Dhamma question. He spoke very few words and, got rid of him. Disappointed, he went to another monk and he asked the same question. He went on explaining until he had earache. Talking. Disappointed with him, went to another monk. He spoke somewhere neither too long nor short. It's a medium, length. He disappointed with these three monks, went to the Buddha and said, what are your students? I went and asked so and so. He was so stingy with words. He said very quick little thing. Second person started giving me until I got so tired and sleepy. And third person with the measured medium. Then Buddha said, Purana metang atula netang ajitana nindanti tunni masina nindanti bahubhana mita bahana pi nindanti nati loke anindito nachahu nachabhavistati nachetara vijjati ekantam nindito kosa ekantam ma pasandito. So I'm going to be like that long monk who gave the long explanation. I don't want to do that. Summary is, Atula, this is the nature of the world. When somebody says little, you get disappointed. When somebody says long, too long, you get disappointed. If somebody says something medium, you get disappointed. There is no one who is always blamed or always praised. This is the nature. So when we get blamed, we are disappointed. When we are praised, we are happy, thinking this state is permanent. It is not. Then, in the sukha dukkha, when we are happy, we are delighted, thinking that this is going to stay for long, forever. And when we are suffering, we are lamenting and so on. So, This discourse called Mangala Sutta, where Buddha listed 38 blessings, if you read the discourse from the beginning to the end, and very carefully, mindfully, you can see it started with a very simple thing and then slowly graduated up to the attainment of full enlightenment. And then he explained the state of mind of the person who has attained enlightenment. His mind will not be affected by worldly vicissitudes, worldly conditions, ups and downs. That person remains steady. Why? That is the person who saw impermanence very clearly. Any state we experience is not permanent, impermanent. And therefore it doesn't matter. I think last time when I was talking about equanimity, I mentioned this. When one's, spiritual equanimity, you remember? What you call samisa, niramisa, mundane equanimity and spiritual equanimity. When you have seen the truth exactly as it is, your mind remains equanimous, balanced, steady, not shaken, and you remain very peaceful. And that's all I must say today with regard to contact. I think my time also is up now. Okay? If you have any question, this is time to ask.
Bhante, the last sentence, the paragraph, the one before the last, I think that's where the printing mistakes, the two mistakes you said in
Right,
the beginning.
right. You
Starting
can,
from C, Dhatu, Banga.
right, you can delete the middle patigha, between. Somehow my cursor might have stopped somewhere and kept typing, and another few letters inserted there by mistake. If you remove that, you get the correct word. Now, any other question?
Bhante, can I ask, not about this, can I ask a question about something else?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Remember when we were talking about, I don't know, maybe several months ago, about karma, and when the moment, we were talking about the 5 aggregates, and when at your death, when it's time for your rebirth, the 4 aggregates, but not the 5th, the body, go with you to your next life, right?
Did I say that?
I'm asking you. I thought you did. I thought it was everything but the body. No?
I don't think so.
Okay. I'm glad I'm asking then.
I'm glad you asked me.
Yes.
Very good. When at the last moment of your death, the last moment means last moment. Don't ask me what is the next last moment.
Okay.
That last moment. Your consciousness is the seed. Karma is the field. Greed is the moisture.
Okay.
Now you remember these 3 work together.
Okay.
In Pali, kammang kettam, vijnanang bijam, and tanha sineho. We find this statement in Anguttara Nikaya as well as Samyutta Nikaya. So, in the field of karma, karma is not something that you can see, but it is the mental state. In that state, the consciousness that has already prepared, settle in the karma. And then these two bind together by greed. That means greed make them alive. Moisture normally represents life. Where there is moisture, life can exist. That is why they try to find life in the outer space, where they can find some moisture. So these two bind by the desire. Now that is what you find in the next life. All mental states. I did not say any other aggregates is going from this life to next one.
Okay.
It can be Chetana, Sankappa, and underlying tendency, Anusaya. Chetana, Sankappa, Anusaya. Chetana means thought, Sankappa means thinking, then Anusaya means underlying tendency.
It means what, I'm sorry?
Huh?
The last one, what does it mean? Anusaya?
Underlying tendency.
Okay.
Underlying tendency. Now, when the person is going to die, one of them will become active. Underlying tendency means greed, as I mentioned earlier. Then Chetana means thought. Thought is in the karma. That's karma. Then thinking. Thinking of a place where the person is going to be born. Now, they all work together, but the force that carries them to the next life is desire. Desire. Binding together.
Right.
Buddha has given a beautiful simile to Vachagota of fire. Fire. When fire is burning here, and fire may go out from here, and all of a sudden 10 feet away a tree catches fire. So Buddha asked Vachagota, what is the fuel for the fire to go to that tree? From here, fire goes to that tree. What is the agent? Not the agent. What is the fuel that burns fire between here and there?
Great.
Air.
Oh.
Wind.
Okay.
Air. Very simple, isn't it? If there is no air, how can this fire go there?
Yeah.
Similarly, desire brings this for all kind of karma collected in consciousness into next life.
Okay. And then in the second part,
Yeah.
is the state of mind that you are in at the time of your death. You talked about that, like if you're angry or you have other negative emotions, it affects.
Yes, yes.
Does it?
Negative or positive
Okay.
mental state is it will determine the next life.
By itself, or in collection with the other karma?
In connection with other karmas.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And also this is not something that we can explain, in very clear, tangible terms. I mean, rebirth is extremely difficult. Even yesterday somebody asked me, it's very important question. Yesterday I talked to 20 teachers, meditation teachers, 21. And one of them asked me, once returner and never returner, when you talk about once returner and never returner, where do they return from?
That's a good question.
Huh?
That's a good question.
That is why they are teachers,
Yes.
to ask good questions. That means people must, in Buddhism, the principle of rebirth is so basic, so fundamental, even the highest attainment of enlightenment, except even Arahanthood, until that Arahanthood, all the steps are explained in terms of rebirth. Once you return to this life once is called once returner. Once you return to this life, doesn't return to this life, never return, and so on. Return from where? Return from another existence. What is the another? How that happens? Suppose we practice Noble Eightfold Path in a supramundane level and attain the stream entry. That individual will never be born in a lower plane of existence. The lowest is human level. They can be reborn in divine realms. If they had practiced even jhanic meditation, they can be born in Brahma realms. Those realms, life in those realms are very, very, very long. For instance, those who attain stream entry, once return and never return, and they may still, during the time of the Buddha, they may still exist in those realms, even today. So, when their lifespan is over, they return to this human life, human realm. And they can be, if they are stream enterers, they can return to human realm only 7 times. During that time, they were practicing. Within, they return to this life maybe once, and then practice more meditation, and then attain enlightenment and never come back again. If they could not do it, they will come back here 2 times. Then if they cannot finish their job here, they will be reborn in other higher places and come back again. And so forth. They can return only 7 times. Then they finish. Other individuals who weaken 2 fetters like greed and hatred. Greed and hatred. They remove all the gross part of greed and hatred. gross part. And they can be reborn in higher realms of existence, even in Brahma realms, and they stay there until their lifespan is over, and they will return to this life only once, to human life. And then they finish their attainment and end samsara. Those who attain the third level of enlightenment, they destroy these weakened two fetters, greed and hatred, the subtle form of greed and hatred. They completely destroy it in this life, but still not attain full enlightenment. They will be reborn in a state called Suddhavasa. There are 5. Avya, Atapa, Sudasa, Sudasi, Akanittaka, 5. There are, in Samyutta Nikaya they explain all this their detailed rebirth. And then they will never come back to human life to finish their work, attainment. Because in those realms they continue their meditation because they still have the consciousness, they still have the mind. And they know that they have little more to work.
Are those the pure abodes? The pure abodes?
Yeah, they are called pure abodes. So, there they will finish their attainment and attain full enlightenment, never come back. They are called never returns. Arahant, who have attained full enlightenment, they make a statement. Usitang brahmacharyam katang karaniya na parang ittathaya. I have lived holy life. I have done what was to be done. Nothing more to do. That means they know that there is no rebirth. Now, this is a very unusual attainment. In many traditions, many religions, your liberation will take place after death. Liberation after death. In our tradition, you know that there is no rebirth, here and now. You have finished all your work. All these stages are explained in terms of rebirth. And therefore the rebirth teaching, doctrine of rebirth, is so fundamental to Buddhism. The craving, even craving is explained. Porno bhavika nandiraga sagata tatra tatrabi nandini. Craving is explained. Porno bhavika, re-becoming. Nandi raga sagata, with desire and clinging. Nandi means joy or happiness, and raga means clinging. Sagata, tatra tatrabi nandini. Enjoys here and enjoys there and keep on enjoying here and enjoying there. That is the nature of desire. So, enjoying here, enjoying there does not mean enjoying one day at the Bhavana Society, next day in Washington DC, not like that. But one day in this life, next day in another life. So the entire teaching, then after attainment of enlightenment, the Buddha said that aneka jati samsaram sandhavissam anibhisam gahakarakam gavesantu dukkha jati punappunam gahakarakam dittosi punagehannakasi sabbate pasuka bagga gahakutam visankitam visankaragatam chittam tannanam kayamajjaga. Through many a birth, I wandered in samsara, seeking but not finding the builder of this house. O house builder, thou art seen. Thou shalt not build this house again. Thy rafters are broken, thy ridgepole is shattered, the mind attained the unconditioned. Never build this house again. Aneka jati, many lives, I was reborn. And also on the day he attained enlightenment, he had 3 knowledges. Pubbhe nivasanusati, yata kammopaga, then asavakkaya. Pubbhe nivasanusati means he saw himself born many lives in the past. He began to recollect 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 100,000 millions, eons and eons of. His mind was so clear. And then he saw other individuals also dying and taking rebirth according to their karma. According to my karma, I was born so many times. Other individuals also are taking rebirth again according to their karma. Then he began to think, what is the reason for me to be born so many times, for them to be born so many times? What is the reason? Then he saw dependent origination. When he saw dependent origination, perfectly clearly his asavas completely vanished. That is called asava jnana. The knowledge of destruction of underlying tendencies came to him at that time. So these 3 knowledges. So from that point onward, he taught about rebirth. And therefore, accepting the doctrine of rebirth is very fundamental in Buddhist thought, Buddhist teaching. It is not something, some people say, it is just Indian mythology, Indian traditions, they just incorporated into Buddhism and Buddha adopted it. No, he himself saw it. Believing it or not, in it or not is a different matter.
One thing.
Yeah.
Oh, so just so I'm clear, so when Buddha said the builder should not build this house anymore because there's nothing left to use to build the house with.
Yeah.
So essentially, what that tells me in my mind is when I meditate that I'm constantly deconstructing my conditioned mind.
You are doing what?
When I'm in meditation, then I'm going to constantly be deconstructing my conditioned mind.
Right.
So there's nothing. There's nothing there.
Exactly. That is what we normally do when we meditate. We try to reduce our rebirth conditioning. Rebirth conditioning. And what is the house builder? Buddha said, oh, builder, do not build this house again. Who is that builder? Ignorance. Ignorance. So, I think that is important teaching to remember. I think this is enough. Yeah, you have a question?
Can I ask one more one thing?
Okay.
The mentality, the contact is first. Why attention is not in the first place? We always make the attention first and all the others come through like contact, Vedana, Sanya, like that.
I use that?
No. One thing you said is the contact is the first. I agree, but why it is not attention coming first?
Walter, it doesn't matter what comes first. All the five are there. It can be contact, it can be feeling, it can be thought and so forth. But in some places, manasikara sambhava sabbe dhamma. In another place, phassa samudaya sabbe dhamma. Both you can find in Anguttara Nikaya. Manasikara sambhava sabbe dhamma only when your attention goes somewhere, then all the dhammas arise.
That's called.
In this place, phassa samudaya sabbe dhamma. Now, manasikara attention is drawn by the contact. So contact has to be first. Only when you contact, attention goes there. And for this reason, I think in this list I mentioned contact first. We all know, as I said, when you sleep, suddenly you wake up because something contact you through ears, the body, eyes, nose, something contact. You wake up. Then you begin to pay attention to what you saw. When you write a list, we can write in any order, but the real factual order is contact first.
Bhanteji, when you say the chetana at the time of death, and then sankappa, and then tanha, is that sankappa, that type of thinking, would that be like intention as well?
Sankappa cannot be without intention.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. I have one like that.
That's what it's.
Did you see that?
Yeah, you show me white one.
Hi, Bhanteji.
Hi, how are you?
How are you? So good to see you, Bhante.
Yes, you did not come lately.
I know. A lot of